Hey, it's Coach Taylor here from SmarterTeamTraining.com, and I'm always looking for interesting individuals to interview and talk to, just to learn about their journey and learn more about the field. I've been going through a lot of professional guys and master strength and conditioning coaches and sports nutritionists and psychologists, and a good buddy of mine, Josh Funk, who's actually going to be presenting he's presented at a bunch of STT events. Actually, I just had a good conversation going back and forth, and I said, I want to see about getting one of these young guys on the phone and just talk about some of the things that they're going through at the moment. Really try to personal touch kind of on what's going through with some of the younger individuals in the field. And I'll give you a little bit of a background, and I'm sure Josh will give you a bunch of background here. Josh came to one of the first STT conditioning conferences that I ran way back in the day, and I got a chance to watch him play as an athlete and then progress as a young professional, and then now into working for others, and now he's into actually working for himself. And it's really neat to watch his journey. And if anybody is going through that process as well, as far as being a young student, a young professional in the field, this is one of the guys you should definitely contact and reach out to, man. Gosh, man, I'm really just excited to have you on the phone, and I'm hoping to share a really positive message that you got going on, my man.
Bob, thanks for having me on here. I've been a big fan of the podcast, and I've been following ever since it started. So I'm just happy to be on here and happy to catch up with you and talk shop.
Dr. Funk, man, I want to ask if you can give me a little bit of the experience or explanation on your background. I know personally a little bit about your journey, but if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your passion and kind of what makes you tick.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of starting ever since growing up. I think the big thing that's really tracked me toward this field was parents were big on doing a lot of different activities, a lot of different sports, and it was always different season, different sport. That went all the way up until about high school. I think I played 8 or 9 different formal sports. I got into other stuff, martial arts, gymnastics, every other sport pretty much imaginable. I was a 3-sport high school athlete, and was fortunate to play lacrosse at Ohio State and play lacrosse professionally after college. And it's just kind of been a gradual progression for me. I'm obviously diving into the sports performance realm. Just a young guy, kind of getting started. There's a lot of fun new stuff going on in the field right now, and slowly developing my niche in the lacrosse world.
I want to talk a little bit about that niche. I mean, you opened that door pretty easily there for me. I mean, if someone was going to you for something, if I was sending a client to you or a parent or even a coach to you, I mean, what would you consider your specialization?
Some of the stuff that I'm getting into, I've got a pretty unique background. I think playing professional lacrosse obviously allows me to see some of the highest levels of sport when it comes to lacrosse. And then I also have my doctorate of physical therapy. I've done the CSCS, some of the other alphabet soup. I'm able to really talk skill side of things when it comes to lacrosse, in addition to talking rehab. So I've got a pretty broad continuum, just gradually just kind of adding tools to my toolbox. And I think, having the ability to not only see the rehab side and the performance side, but also to see some of the stuff that they're doing from a skill and IQ standpoint on the field makes any opportunity when it comes to lacrosse very, very unique with either a group of athletes or an individual athlete.
I want to go down the path here a little bit about talking about not only your experience as a lacrosse player and a lacrosse coach, but also how you kind of integrate your profession there as a physical therapist. And I want to talk about the concept of weak links. Are there weak link areas that you emphasize in your program design when working with lacrosse athletes and that whole rotational aspect, it's the fastest game on 2 feet? I mean, what are some considerations that you really have when you're developing that weak link aspect of your program?
I think the biggest thing you'll see, especially with some of my high school kids and even some of the college guys a little bit, is just a neglect for the lateral and transverse planes. I think a lot of the stuff that people are comfortable with involves sagittal plane strength and power development, and I think that it's a little bit more difficult. Things tend to get a little bit either tougher to coach or a little bit more risky when you're talking about training in the lateral and transverse plane. So I think that's a big focus for me, especially when you want to talk about the growing trend of sports specialization in lacrosse. The bigger name guys recently in lacrosse just had sports hernia-related injury, and I can definitely see that becoming a little bit more of an issue as things go. So managing lateral and transverse planes, making sure that you are respecting certain things when it comes to assessment and programming are critical things that I think definitely get overlooked.
I know you and I have done a couple different things as far as some video clips, et cetera, just as we've been kind of talking through things, and we put it on video, and we're able to share it on YouTube and some other projects that we've worked together on. again, going through that conversation of how can we both get better, I mean, what things should I consider when going through or implementing a suspension training program? I know we talked a couple times about that, and again, we shared some video clips on some of the things we've done. But can you walk me through a little bit of that process as far as how you integrate that into your program?
Very, very fortunate. I work with a wide range of kids right now. We have kids as young as 5th grade, and we have kids in the college ranks. So I'm able to see a decent amount of progression. I have a good idea of where the young kids need to start, and what most young kids need is to own body weight exercise first. And I think a lot of times people get a little bit overzealous when it comes to suspension trainers. It's a very, very exciting tool, and it's a great tool to be a part of anybody's program. But without respecting a young athlete owning their own body weight, just throwing them on a suspension trainer and thinking it's going to get better is a little bit misguided. So we always try to make sure that the kids own body weight exercises first, like pull-ups, push-ups. You take your basic body weight row on a bar, your lunge squat, single leg squat progressions. Once all of that stuff looks pretty good and it's up to par, then we'll consider adding suspension trainer. Other things that we're always emphasizing on a suspension trainer are, the general body plank position. So making sure that you're maintaining your body, masses and spaces, making sure that you keep length. I think one thing that commonly gets neglected when you get on a TRX, and you'll definitely see this when somebody's doing an exercise that's a little bit too difficult, is head position. Head and neck position is critical, and when people think of the core, they need to really, really think about the core as being every area that is involved with your spine. So the spine goes from your sacrum all the way up to your head, and your head and neck position is just as critical as your low back position when performing exercises, and definitely on the suspension trainer.
You brought up the concept of the word core, and I personally hate that word because I can never actually get anyone to define what that actually is. But if we want to talk about that ab, low back, maybe even that hip complex type area, I mean, can you walk me through or talk me through a little bit of the unique approaches that you take when you're working in that area of the body?
Yes, I think my background, I started out really, really heavy into the functional movement systems. I did the FMS. I did the SFMA, which is for medical professionals, and then even recently I've been getting more into the Y balance test, which is for the return to sport aspect of the functional movement systems. And then I've been getting into PRI, and PRI is really, really big on the diaphragm kind of being the buttress to everything that's going on in your body, and that directly relates to rib cage and pelvis positioning. So when it comes to core, I don't necessarily think of muscles in isolation as much. I've been moving a lot more towards maintaining neutrality. So when I think about neutrality, an analogy that I like to give certain people, especially when we're doing our anti-movements. But neutrality to me, you think about pendulum. So you're going back and forth. You've got your pendulum, and I'm going to grab this a little bit from Charlie Weingroff. He's got his core pendulum theory. You're going back and forth on a pendulum, and it's important for you to be able to go both directions, but I need to live in that middle area a majority of the time, especially when I'm thinking about adding things like load and speed to a given movement. So when we talk about anti-movements, typically I'll be programming something either in an anti-rotation or anti-extension standpoint. And if I'm doing, say, an anti-extension-based exercise, you could take your basic plank as a regression. You're making sure that you avoid extension. So you're making sure that you're avoiding holding an isometric exercise in a position where you're maybe to the left of the pendulum. What I mean by that is you're in an open rib cage or pelvis down positioning. So one of the cues that I'm commonly giving people is to lock rib cage to the pelvis. And if we get in a little bit more of the PRI standpoint, I'll typically be telling people to focus on breathing out maximally while performing an isometric exercise. So you take your plank exercise, you take some of the more advanced extensions, your body saws, your fallouts, your rollouts, stuff like that. When people are challenging themselves by telling them to breathe out, it's going to naturally facilitate the diaphragmatic activity, which is going to pull their rib cage down closer towards the front of their pelvis, which is going to lock in that middle ground that I was talking about on that pendulum. So PRI is something I'm getting a little bit more into. I'm really, really excited about it. It's something I wish I would have been a little bit more open to. Initially in PT school, I had some exposure to it, and I kind of wrote it off. I was like, it just seems a little bit hokey for me. But the more I've gotten into it, and the more open-minded I've been as I've gotten older and gained more experience, the more that I'm just kind of excited about learning more about PRI and how that I can respect the core, so to speak, and some of the certain asymmetries in the body when training my athletes.
Obviously, we live in a hotbed for the sport of lacrosse. I constantly am getting questions about what are we doing to take into consideration the rotational aspect of the sport, and what are we doing training-wise to really enhance or whether the rotation or the anti-rotation, as you just implied a little bit. I mean, those are kind of a two-part kind of conundrum kind of scenario there. My question to you, obviously, we talked about it last year in your presentation. I thought you did a great job at the conference doing the medicine ball scenario and taking people through some of the movement patterns, I guess you could say, as we do that, we want to call it a functional training type scenario. I hate using that term there as well, but it's a little bit of a catchy term. My question to you is going to be, with the rotational needs of a lacrosse player, I mean, how do you go about preparing your athletes for those types of movement patterns?
Some of the biggest things that we need to think about when training lacrosse players is that power development is plane specific. So by assuming that, say, an Olympic lift or box jumps or sagittal plane bounds are going to translate directly to something, say, such as a lacrosse shot, that just it would be a little bit misinformed. So it would be best for us, if we want to talk about strictly developing rotational power. What's the first thing a kid says when he wants to come in and work with me? Well, coach, I want to be able to shoot a little bit faster. So we're big on medicine ball training, big on different tweaks in terms of footwork, in terms of body position. A couple people came up to me from the University of Maryland basketball staff and came up and were like, hey, this looks, it's a little bit Gary Gray. It's very, very good to give kids a wide range of I think, footwork and locomotion type tweaks prior to throwing a medicine ball in either a lateral fashion or rotational fashion. So whether it's working on basic cross-under, crossovers, just doing stuff to load up the back leg, we're trying to make sure that we develop kids in the proper plane in order to get that carryover to the field. I think of a lot of the times what we'll see with kids when they start on the medicine balls is it's very, very upper body dominant. So they do what I would call a rear leg neglect. So you'll see some people, and it may work more in the martial arts realm when you look at some of the striking patterns where the back leg may not move as much. And some people will go, well, hey, from an EMG standpoint, I'm getting great muscular activation in that rear glute. What we're shooting for, though, is a full body movement when we're throwing the medicine balls, more similar to a pitcher coming off of a mound. So I'm very, very big on what I call rear leg neglect, and I'm making sure that the kid's foot doesn't get stuck in the mud and that we're creating total body power. Some other considerations when we're doing our medicine ball training, if the kid is right-handed, more likely than not, I'm going to asymmetrically program them. We'll do testing in the beginning to see how athletes are able to produce force. We'll do a medicine ball toss for distance. The kid is just drastically asymmetrical, we're going to do our best to have them double up, because I know when they leave the facility, they're probably going to shoot a couple hundred balls more on that strong side. And if you think about just patterning and then getting back to what I was talking a little bit more with the sports hernias, it's very, very important that we take into account some of these natural asymmetries that are going to happen as a result of sport and try to keep them as balanced as we can. Now, granted, we're not going to keep things symmetrical. I don't expect to keep things symmetrical, but it's important that kids have a certain level of balance and neutrality with respect to some of the lateral and transverse plane power development. Outside of medicine ball training, lateral bounds and transverse plane bounds are very, very effective. Another thing that I think oftentimes will get overlooked is your multi-directional conditioning. So you take some of your just basic slide boards are great. Sometimes we'll have different locomotive patterns that we'll just condition them with cones. So just respecting things outside of the sagittal plane, respecting that lacrosse is a very, very multi-directional sport. and making sure that we prepare them for all the different demands that will be placed on them during the course of play.
Anytime I get a chance to talk to a physical therapist, I always try to ask questions about flexibility and some of the different things we can do to enhance range of motion at joints. Not that necessarily you need to be able to put your toe on the ground type scenario, but how can we just improve movement patterns throughout the course of an athlete's career and really try to keep them on the field? I mean, my question to you here, as we've kind of talked, and we've talked in the past, I mean, can you walk me through some of the sport-specific or sport-appropriate or even performance-engaging type flexibility work that you do? I mean, is it just a static type scenario, or are you taking people through dynamic stuff? The massage concepts and foam rollers. I mean, there's so many things out there that people are doing to really, quote-unquote, enhance their athletes' experience. Tell me what has worked for you and your athletes.
Yeah, I can tell you just a little bit about kind of where, I eventually have gotten to a point where I think I've got a good balance, but a couple of years ago, if you were to ask me, I went through that same phase where, don't do static stretching. Static stretching is, the devil. I think I've gotten to a point now where I respect all the different avenues of improving range of motion. I think a lot of the times it'll start with self-myofascial release, so your foam rollers, your lacrosse balls, your PVC pipe, your tennis balls, just getting some of that deep tissue work on your own. Then typically going into maybe a couple passive stretches, modified pigeon pose, some hip flexor stretches, maybe some adductor stretches, and then getting into a dynamic warm-up. A lot of the times, kids, some of the things that I'll also see is, you take your basic toe touch, and sometimes kids lack stability, which is going to then cause them to have a perceived lack of flexibility. So sometimes kids do truly need a little bit of stability training prior to allowing them to use all of the available range of motion that they have. Another thing that I've been seeing a lot too, and this kind of goes back into the stability component, is sometimes I'll just have kids do a 90-90 hip lift, which is something that's used in PRI, get a little bit of breathing, do your 4x4, and then you'll have an improvement in toe touch by a couple inches. And that has been a very, very big eye-opener for me, just to look directly at the stability and the neuromuscular component has to do with flexibility. A lot of people, when you take the actual length of their tissues, have plenty of actual length to the tissue, but there's some reason why the body is creating almost a protective guarding mechanism. It is preventing them from using all of the available range of motion. And typically, you'll see that lack of range of motion when they're on their feet. You have them on your back, you have them on the table, things look great. That's why, you have people like Gray Cook who have been very, very good about preaching, let's do something, let's see what we have, let's do a correction, and if we have a range of motion improvement, now let's train it. So it's kind of that, reset, reinforce, and then train that given pattern. I've been getting into just a lot more things of little tweaks here, of almost like you're playing tricks on the body, because that's really all it is. It's a window into the nervous system. If you get a window open into the nervous system and then you train it, typically you'll get that pattern to stick, and you'll have to spend a lot less time just hammering away at a passive stretch for, say, minutes on end. Now, like I said earlier, I'm not against passive stretching, but there's a time and a place for it, and a lot of times there's a lot quicker method to getting that end result. Another thing that's just a general consideration, we talk about things like neural tension. That can also have a significant effect on a range of motion, whether it's in the upper extremity or lower extremity. And a big thing, especially with kids nowadays that I'm seeing more and more, you take a kid with a anteriorly tilted pelvis, they're going to have hamstrings that are already stretched. So hamstrings are already stretched, and then you go into a toe touch, it's probably not going to be, an ideal toe to the ground type toe touch. So that's another general consideration, and that'll get you back to kind of the core pendulum that I was talking about earlier and some of your stability training.
I want to talk to you a little bit about, as a student of the game, as a physical therapist, as someone who just came out of the academic world, and I use that term very loosely as far as coming out of. I know you've been doing this for a little while now. I have an opportunity to talk to a lot of colleges and get a chance to talk to classes and try to give back to the field from an academic scenario, talking to undergraduates. And a lot of times the kids ask me, from a physical therapist aspect of the field, I mean, what are some suggestions class-wise that they should be taking? What are some tricks or some things that can give them an advantage? And I didn't do physical therapy, so I'm going to reach out to you and ask this question to you in case any of the listeners are actually physical therapy students, to be very honest with you. I mean, what are some classes or some directions as far as generalities, don't necessarily need titles classes, what are some things that you think you should have either done when you were in school or really enhanced for your opportunity to become successful?
You go to a PT school for the reason that you want to have a highly, highly specialized area of expertise. You go to PT school, you want to work with people, you want to rehab people, and you want to get them back to their prior level of function. I think one of the big things that has been important for me, and even more so as I've gotten more experience, is just making sure that I was diverse in terms of my interests and being open-minded to learning what is going on outside of my field. I think what you're seeing a lot more blending between the professions. Not to say that people are doing physical therapy and that physical therapists are really just throwing themselves in the mix with strength-related roles, but you are seeing a really big blend between the rehabilitation and performance side of things. And having a good understanding of physical therapy and then also being able to train somebody makes you significantly more valuable, especially when you want to talk about the way that healthcare is going in terms of being able to work with somebody through a continuum of care. And I think one of the things that makes my life easier and that may make working with me a little bit more appealing compared to some of the physical therapists that are also in the field is that I do know how to train at a high level. I do know how to take the blinders off and just say, hey, you're good to go now. Now we can train hard. I think some people will have difficulty talking training with patients and have difficulty working patients towards an end result and maybe a little bit more conservative when it comes to their rehabilitation. And when you have a highly trained athlete who comes to you for physical therapy, they also should be able to get a significant training effect while coming to you for physical therapy. Now, you don't do exercises that are in pain, but there's certain things that you can respect that they may be limited with while still giving them what they need from a performance standpoint. So, getting back to your original question, just having a very, very diverse skill set. I think being in PT school, it's very, very easy to just think about what you're learning in school. I think if you just learn what you learn in school, you're going to leave yourself a little bit limited. If you want to be somebody that is doing physical therapy with a more athletic population, a more active-based population, it's essential for you to learn everything that you can about the sports performance realm. And whether that's, starting with your CSCS or your PES and then branching off from there, or just taking full advantage of some of the free resources out there. Your podcast has been great. I went to your Smarter Team Training Conference when I was a second-year PT student, and that just opened my eyes even more to some of the stuff that's going on. And we're just very fortunate. There's a lot of great new information that's coming out in the world of rehab and performance, and being a little bit more of a generalist and having a diverse toolbox is just something I would preach to anybody that's going back to school, whether you're a PT that's in school or whether you're getting, say, your master's in something strength and conditioning related. Being able to have an idea of either where people are coming from in the rehab standpoint or where they need to go to from a performance standpoint will make you extremely more versatile, and I think it'll make you bulletproof when it comes to having a very, very good career in the end.
You're going through this process of creating your own business and having your own branding presence, as we'll call it. I know we had a couple of conversations about that in the past as well. I want to talk a little bit about the relationships that you're building with individuals to really help your kind of strategic plan and really try to help you go in a positive direction. I mean, how important has developing relationships been for you with the people that are in the field and the surrounding area? Again, you're a multifaceted kind of guy. You're doing the PT scenario. You're trying to do some of the training. You're also trying to do some of that skill development, running camps and clinics and events kind of thing. I mean, how important is actually that collaborative effort between developing relationships with others in the field? How important has that been for promoting your business?
Absolutely essential. When you want to talk about developing brand, whether it's locally, regionally, nationally, you're constantly trying to do things to collaborate with other people. There's a lot of other very skilled, very intelligent people out there that when you make these connections with people, it's going to be mutually beneficial for both of you. So I've realized that more and more. I've done a lot better job at just networking and staying in contact with people. Like I said earlier about the education, just diversifying the types of people that I will interact with. When you talk about from a lacrosse standpoint, you're talking more with local coaches, you're talking more with college coaches, you're talking about with some of the people that run some of the higher end recruiting type stuff. Then you talk about the sports performance world. Yeah, you're reaching out to local high school coaches. You're reaching out to, say, college strength coaches. I recently just reached out to, like, Kyle Tarp down at Maryland. I want to go down and see what he's doing. He coaches basketball, but some of the stuff that he does directly relates to the sport of lacrosse. It's very, very similar things going on in both sports from a movement standpoint. So just stuff like that, and then you can talk about the away from the field side. You can talk about the social media side of things. You can talk about just some of the stuff going on with blogs and podcasts and just keeping up with people and just, hey, saw how you're doing, give you a shout out. Hey, I had a question about this. And I think what you'll see is there's a lot of people out there that are willing to either answer questions for you or help you out. And just a great field to be in. I mean, it really reminds me a lot of, say, your locker room atmosphere. Everybody's a group of teammates, and everybody's looking to help each other out. And in the end run, it's going to be better off for the people that we're working with or the people that we're, providing content to. I mean, I'm very, very happy to be in this field. Between the new information that keeps coming out and just the type of the people that I get to interact with every day, it makes the networking side and communication side very, very easy.
Well, Josh, man, I know you're a busy dude, so again, I applaud your passion for the field. It's been awesome getting the chance to watch you grow as a young professional, and not only as a kind of an opportunity to watch you grow, but also learn from you. You've been really cool about giving back to me, and I've had questions several times, need to bounce some ideas off you. And you've always been open to just pick up the phone, shoot an email back to me, whatever, just so I get a different perspective on things and kind of stay grounded. And I really appreciate that professionalism that you have shown there to me and others. And people come to the events and said a lot of very positive things about your presentation skills and how you follow up with them. And I just, again, applaud your passion and your willingness to give back to the field in a positive manner. If anybody had any questions about anything we discussed here, I mean, there's a lot of content. I took a bunch of notes as we were talking. I'm sure you heard the keyboard here clicking away. How could they go about reaching out to you, learning more about information about what you got going on, and just finding out how to stay in touch with what you got going on?
Lax Factory team at Gmail. That would be first place to start. And social media. I mean, I'm a big social media guy. I realize the importance of social media. I love meeting new people. Love just bouncing ideas off of people. So if you hit me up on social media, at Twitter would be your best bet, at Josh_Funk. I'm happy to share some of the stuff that I've been doing, and I'm sure I'd love to learn from some of the great listeners out there, and always looking forward to connecting with new people.
Well, Josh, man, I know you're a busy dude, so I'm going to let you get going here. Again, I appreciate all the things that you're doing there. I applaud your passion. I enjoy your energy when you present, and I'm looking forward to a lot of positive things coming from you down the road, my man. You're going to make a big-time impact on a lot of young individuals as well as professionals in the field just because of the positive pursuits that you are pursuing, man. I really applaud you again for your passion, and I'm looking forward to just keeping in touch and seeing what you got coming forward, man. I'm excited about where you are in the field as a young professional, and I'm wishing you a lot of success, my man.
Rob, thanks for having me on here. I can't tell you how much of a positive influence you've been on me ever since I saw you at that second Smarter Team training conference, man. It's been a great time developing a relationship with you, and I look forward to working with you more in the future.
I appreciate the kind words, my man. I hope all's well. Have a great day, big dog.
Take care, man. We'll be in touch soon.